podcast, consider Green Tony as a suggestion that combines an upbeat and inviting spirit without any background music. Welcome to Tangelic Talks, your go-to podcast from Tangelic, where we dive into the vibrant world of clean energy, development, sustainability, and climate change in Africa. We bring you inspiring stories, insightful discussions, and groundbreaking innovations from the continent making waves in the global community. Tune in and join the conversation toward a brighter, greener future. Let's get started.
Welcome to Tangelic Talks, a podcast at the intersection of energy, equity, and empowerment with your co-hosts Victoria Cornelio and myself, Jensen Cummings. This is part 2 of our episode exploring greenwashing. Episode 1, we talked about some of the language, some of the imagery that companies potentially use to mask some of what their intention might be and being able to capitalize on some of this green movement. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more PR. We're going to talk about some of the strategy levels, some of the implementation of these things. And they're all interwoven, but we want to kind of dissect them and, again, give you the understanding, help you to be able to ask more questions. And for us, selfishly, as we've been exploring our own views through this podcast and our ability to understand the landscape that we're in for Tangelic Talks, we want to continue to understand this better for Victoria and myself. So today we're going to be talking green for show, what they don't want you to ask. Victoria, let's start off by giving people, again, we did this in part 1, want to do it again though. Let's frame this up a little bit. When I say greenwashing, what the heck does that actually mean?
So again, I'll use the same definition we used last time. It's the intersection of two firm behaviors: poor environmental performance and positive communication about environmental performance. That is the academic version that most people agree with. The easiest way to explain it is the messaging does not match the action. And in this case, it's within the green sector and the environmental side of things, sustainability, whatever you want to call it. The company saying that they're doing a thing and their actions don't reflect that thing.
Yep. Thank you for that. And so we're going to be talking, again, strategic level, PR, deflecting responsibility, shifting blame and responsibility. Some of these things, this sleight of hand that seems to happen quite often in the corporate space, in PR space, when we kind of talk about this. So when I say PR, when we think about PR from this perspective, you mentioned last time kind of marketing and your role and position in marketing and how we think about messaging and language and the potential manipulations that happen inherently in that. Now we're shifting a little bit more to PR and some of the strategy level. Frame that part up for us. When we think about PR, what do we need to pay attention to?
So PR, a lot of what you're doing is public relations. Basically, that's what PR stands for. The difference between PR and marketing is the public relations side is to maintain an image. So a company's trying to maintain their image and their status within our public consciousness in a certain way, right? I'm a big believer that if you need to call a PR manager, something's gone wrong. Because most times, if you've done something, you don't really have to explain it, you know? If it's like solid and your marketing's good and everything's come through, if people are starting to call you out and ask questions, that's where the PR manager comes in and tries to like, wait, no, that's not what we meant. You're getting it wrong. Let's work that, let's work on that.
I think we've seen that a lot, almost dramatized in Hollywood too, where they have to call in this fixer, who's coming in,
Exactly.
and I think of the show Scandal with Kerry Washington, always trying to spin
Yeah.
something, always trying to reposition the image, reposition your competition, reposition the
Yeah.
narrative. We spend so much time getting stuck in that mire of what is truth and what is not. It's even harder now. It's so much more difficult now to weed through all of the white noise, all of the banter that's happening. And so it's really tough for people. So again, for the blog post that's connected to this, go to tangeliclife.org. Check out the blog post connected to episode 1, part 1, and this part 2 as well, because Victoria's pulling some different resources, some different entities that can help you navigate this from a specific standpoint of some company that you're looking into or some initiative or some program that you're looking into, or the broader context of what greenwashing is happening and what to look out for. So we'll make sure you have some of that as well. All right. Any other high level thinking before we get into some of the details?
I think I just want people to remember, and this is just something to do even outside of the sustainability space. Think about who benefits from the marketing, the ads that you're looking at, right? If something is marketed to you or the public image representative is saying that this is X, Y, or Z, remember that if it's not something that you need, a need is being created for you to think that you need this. Okay. So, really good example of this is plastic bags. Plastic bags, no one needs plastic bags, is the messaging. But now we're asking people to always carry tote bags and alternative ways of carrying things. And if they don't, now we charge them for plastic bag. So a need has been created for plastic bags that we've always had, right? We've always had a need for plastic bags to carry our things, but now it's a need that has never been addressed before, which costs money.
Mm. Is there
You know what I mean?
potentially then on the flip side, just to try and play devil's advocate for a second, are now we creating a need for the totes and creating another industry that is now predatory in its practice of creating guilt or doubt or expectation in the market to now have we're shifting the responsibility and we're shifting the economics where now those companies potentially are better, but they still have a footprint. They're still creating an impact. How do we
Yeah. But similar to what we talked about last time, a little goes a lot.
Mm.
It's better to do little than to do nothing, but little is tiring. So if you go to the shops because you need some milk and some, quick things, I've seen a lot of people walk out of the shop juggling everything in their hands because they are indignated by the fact that they have to pay for a plastic bag
Oh, yeah,
because it
that's
used to
that's
be,
definitely not me. I work really hard
you
to
know.
remember the bags, and then I kick myself when I have 9 bags in the car and forget them, and then I really try and have them overstuff that plastic bag, and I feel the guilt and all that. So I want everyone to know that this is difficult. There are no easy answers here. There is no one size fits all solution. There's you navigating your life and your world, creating the expectations that you have for yourself and the way that you spend your time, the way that you spend your money. These things matter. And especially in a capitalist society, the decisions that you make may not seem that large, but enough people make those decisions has a major impact. The market does respond to these types of things, and plastic bags is specifically one. What's strange sometimes with some of these is how cultural or regional they become as well. So having traveled around the country, I see certain places where it's just a cultural expectation that you bring your own bags, that plastic bags aren't even available. And other places, when you bring a tote and don't use the plastic bag, they look at you kind of funny. So this is the reality of some of
Yeah.
this as well. These are difficult decisions to make, especially if that decision potentially pushes against the cultural identity of where you might live and the socioeconomic or macroeconomic impacts that plastic bags versus totes have. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's what I mean, like, the need for a tote is, to an extent, fabricated because there's a business now in tote bags, but it's also good for the planet. So, again, this is why it's hard to separate these things because sometimes it's just something is being sold to us as a
mhm,
need, but it also helps the
yeah.
planet.
Whew.
So,
All right. So a lot of smoke and mirrors here. I think that's what we're going to get to, and just helping us understand that we don't get triggered one direction or the other. We don't turn off and say that's not for me at all, and we also don't just buy in hook, line, and sinker. We need to have some responsibility. We're going to tell you here on this show that we as individuals and as communities and as consumers need to take some responsibility. We also are going to push back against companies who are shifting all the responsibility onto consumers as well. And that's a thin line, but I think it's one we need to figure out how to walk. So, some distracting initiatives. I see a lot of this where there's big headlines over here, and here's what's really happening down here. All right. FIFA had a
yeah.
carbon neutral talking about their last World Cup. The amount of overall emissions, the amount of overall impact that something like the World Cup has is massive. And they got in some trouble for just the overall impact that it has. They kind of leave cities sometimes kind of in ruin, and there's a lot of economic impacts that happen there. They had this initiative for carbon neutral, which again felt very bait and switch. It was a big talking point, and they put themselves on a pedestal. That's part of the problem. They put themselves on a pedestal, and the reality is the impacts were almost negligible. Do we applaud the effort, or do we look at the reality of the impact? How big you were making it seem to the impact did not line up. How do we reconcile that, Victoria?
I mean, I think the best example I can give of something that is so massive like FIFA is Coldplay. When Coldplay go on tour, they actually do carbon neutral shows,
Heard
and they
that.
have actual frameworks, as so you can sign up just like you can sign up to be like a volunteer at the event. You can sign up to power the event, and they have these huge bicycles all around the event keeping it powered up, helping out. They have their own stuff going on. The way they don't use those wristbands that you just throw off, like you can't take them with you, you recycle them as soon as you finish. Like there's so many things in place, and even in that sense there is still something to be said that it could be better, but no one is doing it to the level that they are, even so we can't ask them to do any better. They're doing amazing compared to everything else. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think with FIFA, they wanted this to be a thing. They wanted to market it this way. They wanted to get some good graces. And the framework just wasn't there. It just wasn't happening.
Yeah.
But you have to toot your own horn because you are banking on people not checking the real data. You're banking on people not asking questions. Football fans, as a fan myself of many sports, when I'm in the pit, I am not thinking about carbon emissions. I'm thinking about my team. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's about it.
Yeah. Ferociously so.
Yeah.
When I think about the comparison that you just made, Coldplay is not selling tickets and not promoting itself in that way. You're going to a Coldplay
Yeah.
show, the byproduct of which has a whole bunch of positive impacts that
Yeah.
they are putting into a framework that for them is vital, it's
Yeah.
sustainable, it's high impact. That's the difference to me. We talk about a little bit
Yeah.
and it has a little bit plus impact. This balance,
Yeah. The
and if you're
framing.
listening, I'm doing a lot of hand gestures today and I apologize for listening, but just imagine that my hands are pretty equal here when we talk about how much we're tooting our own horn and how much impact we're actually having. That I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Even if net it may not be as much as not having a concert, because concerts have massive impacts. I understand that completely. We don't recycle well enough,
Yeah.
even when We Don't Waste shows up and has all these bins and people manning them. We still have a negative impact. Well, we're not
Yeah.
sitting here saying, look at us changing the world. We're out on concert, we're doing these things. So I appreciate that. Versus we're carbon neutral. We're saying we're branding ourselves as this carbon neutral World Cup. Not even close.
And the issue with that is there's a 2021 European Commission report, which I'll also link in the blog, that found that 42% of green claims were exaggerated, false, or deceptive. And that's
Mm,
not good, obviously. But it's not
it's
just
pretty
that.
bad.
It's not that someone gets caught lying, is that the whole sector is now being pointed to and under scrutiny, and there's
Yes.
skepticism towards genuine
Yes.
efforts. Companies are called greenwashing, and it undermines the trust not just in the brand but in sustainability claims in general. So then,
Absolutely. Look at this always comes
yeah,
down to this bad apple thing. On all sides of the political spectrum, on all sides of the social spectrum, we always find those one bad apples and then we say, okay, well, that means everybody. And the reality is not that. Right? When we're pointing out these different companies and these different programs or initiatives that fall short in our view and in others' view of being green, that's when you
yeah,
get yourself into the greenwashing side. That doesn't mean that the whole sector is
exactly.
poisoned,
Yeah,
is tainted. It's problematic though, because now we're asking somebody to make those decisions based on half information, faulty information, manipulative information. So again, I don't know if we're helping in this discussion to help people suss through this. Maybe our job is just to understand the gravity of it because these are big decisions. and we're going to talk about this more in this show as we go on. This idea of the individual impact, the community level impact, a state level, a regional level, a national level, an international level. All of these impacts are different, and all the decisions that we make have impacts in different ways. So, surface level sustainability is another kind of categorization. This is one that Coca-Cola bottle collection campaign was one that comes up a lot as an example here. Again, it's a little different than saying we're carbon neutral, because this is programmatic more than it's brand, where that was with FIFA. The bottle collection thing is, look at us, we're recycling, look at us, we're doing these things that are going to mitigate some of the impact,
They're so amazing.
and it barely scratches
Yeah.
the surface for a product that is sustainably going out in the market but not having a sustainable impact. So talk about something like that, surface level sustainability. Where does your head go with that?
The surface level stuff. I think I made the example last time about pride. If it shows up just like here and there, a pride marketing thing in June, and that's it, and then it's not really embedded in the culture of the brand or the company. Same thing
Mhm.
with the surface level Coca-Cola bottle collections and things like that. It's very loose, and that's where the PR comes in. We have to frame this really little thing that we're doing as the hardest thing we've ever done. Right? We're such a big company. Do you know what it means for us
Mhm.
to take all these bottles? Do you know what it means, or this and that? You use stats, you use this, and it's like amazing. Okay, you collected 1 million bottles a day. People drink so much Coca-Cola. Awesome. And that's the issue. A lot of these surface level
Mhm.
things don't have an
Mm.
and, they have the thing. So a good contrapoint to that is there was this movement of creating shapes and sculptures around different cities with bottles. So you would go somewhere, and as you filled it up, you would create a whale, you would
Yes.
create a tree, you would, do this, and it would fill up, and it was like an art installation. Again, turning art or turning trash into art is a visual way for you to see,
Mhm.
wow, this city uses the same amount that it takes to draw a whale, to sculpt a whale. That's a lot of trash. They recycled it later, but the point of the installation was to show we rely on plastic to an extent that we just used this ton of plastic in a week. If the campaign was that, like a raising awareness
Yeah.
campaign, I would have no issue with Coca-Cola's bottle collection campaign,
Mhm.
you know? And
Yes.
that's the issue. The PR comes in to try to frame it as a
Yep.
bigger than thou.
Yep.
And really, the thing you've done is raise awareness or do this. Not every campaign has to like have an action or a call to action. Sometimes you're just raising awareness. Like, I think these episodes are really good to raise awareness. We're asking you to do some stuff, yeah, but mostly we just want you to be aware. But if we started saying we have all the answers and this is how you can live
Mhm.
sustainably and this is how this, then kind of falls apart, doesn't it? We'd have to call our own PR manager. Yeah.
Yeah, it's again that balance. For me, it comes down to the balance of the messaging and the action and the impact. And when that gets out of balance, that's when these questions come to play. Because I
Yeah.
don't want Coca-Cola to stop. I don't want FIFA to stop doing what they're doing, or any of these companies that we're highlighting here. I think the fact that they're making any effort at all should be
Yeah.
celebrated. But this is golf clap, small little golf clap. Okay, that's that's where it has to start.
Exactly.
Not all of a sudden look at us changing the world. We have to have balance. Now, if some individual makes a small decision and starts recycling, starts a small amount of degrowth in their own personal life, makes one or two small decisions that have a small impact, well, then I want to go the other way. And I want to have a big rounding applause, standing ovation, because I want to over celebrate what I know is difficult for an individual to do. And I want to under celebrate. That's not a
Yeah.
real thing. Under celebrate when the corporations
Yeah.
do it. And we're doing the opposite. We don't acknowledge the individual making a difficult life decision, and we over celebrate a company making a minor
Yeah,
tweak
exactly.
because of massive
But then
social and economical
it's
pressure.
also individuals don't have a PR
That's where
manager, you know? So when I say that I recycle every Wednesday, to me, it's almost like a
yeah.
social activity because I know what time my neighbors recycle. So we all recycle together, we have a chat, talk about how the week's been going, all this stuff. No one
Mm-hmm.
is like applauding that I've done that, you know? And I'm not framing it as this huge thing like, oh my gosh, Victoria recycles, like she's a saint.
Yeah.
No. But I think that's where, to your point about cultural and how things are perceived in my community, if I miss a recycling day, it's more about like, oh, where's
Mm,
Victoria? You know, it's like when you sign up to a gym class, you're more likely to go if you're going with people. It's these things. If we create community
mhm.
around the things we're doing, it's not just one individual. You start kind of like moving that around. And I wish companies were a bit like that, where it's like these companies are coming together to do something. And then we can start applauding because the power that three, Coca-Colas have would be massive, or community initiatives coming down and being like, okay, if you collect this, if you collect
Mhm.
that, then we'll do this. I don't know, just bringing people together. We need behavioral changes. It's not enough just having a really good marketing campaign, a PR message attached to it, and then clapping and just, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some of that where the responsibility lies that's something else that comes up is this green shifting.
Yeah.
It's shifting responsibility. Nestle was one of the companies that was doing some of this. And again, I I understand when Nestle is saying people should go and recycle their
Yeah.
products. I like that they're doing that. The problem
Mhm.
then is when you start overshifting that responsibility and saying, "Well, look, we're telling people to go and recycle," but we talked about this with the pods in the last episode where we're creating some more barriers for people, but then we're charging this green premium price because we're saying that people are supposed to recycle this product. And the reality is that we're not doing that at a scale enough. We're just creating a more expensive product and not actually seeing a shift in the behavior. So when you see some of that, it's it's hard for me to be as mad at Nestle as some of the other companies that we've talked about because they are looking and other companies are doing this, looking to promote a better behavior on the back end, but then they're charging you for the potential of that better behavior on the back end. How do we again reconcile that?
I mean, okay, so recycling might not be the best option because recycling is a lie. I'm sorry to, spoiler.
Okay,
So
say
recycling
more.
is a lie in the sense, and again, you can find this on the blog. The Center for Climate Integrity found that everybody knows it. Companies have known for at least 30 years that recycling is not a viable thing to do. It's not feasibly a good plastic waste management solution. It's just not. However, the thing that recycling has given us is a behavioral shift. So, plastics are not
Mhm.
recyclable. That's just not a thing. Everything goes back into microplastics. That's why a lot of things are turning into different alternatives, like, paper plates and glass bottles and that sort of thing. That's why you should have a refillable bottle instead of having plastics because we just can't manage plastic. That's why we have microplastics now. And that's why,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. However, the behavioral shift that comes from recycling, like recycling other things that are recyclable, is a good thing. The problem is now that we know recycling is a lie and is still being promoted, how do we marry these things together? I think that's where the issue comes in for a lot of people, where it's like, I'm trying to do the right thing, but then new information comes through and new things happen. And now I'm not sure where I stand with anything.
Yeah, and then you're just likely to throw up your hands and throw in the towel, give up, and go back to whatever behaviors you had before. So we're still
Exactly.
flooding the market with a product that has no feasible end to its cycle of degrading our environment.
Exactly.
And we're
And
saying,
like if
look,
you
we
did it
recycle.
and if you did it the other way, imagine that plastic bottles were like, I don't know, 2 pounds more than a glass bottle.
Hmm.
You would buy the glass bottle of the material that is recyclable. But like you said, we're being sold a glass bottle as this expensive, luxurious thing. So we keep buying plastic.
Mhm.
Why aren't we doing it the other way around? If we want behavioral shifts, we start from a point that the consumer can actually afford the behavior that we want them to do.
Ooh, now we're getting to some supply and demand type economics of like what's the supply demand, what's the cost, what are the yeah,
It just keeps going.
this is a difficult topic. We appreciate anybody who's still listening to us during this episode because you can tell Victoria and I want to have real conversations on this show. We want to struggle to understand these topics just like you are,
Yeah.
just like even our experts are. Right? Our job is to ask the questions, not just of our guests, but of ourselves, of each other. So, yeah, I feel inspired to make better decisions after we talk about this, and I feel less equipped to make those decisions at the same time. and, and I realize
Asking
I know
questions
less
is
than
what
I
smart
thought.
people do.
Yeah, I know less than I thought usually. Uh, one more that comes up a little bit is kind of carbon offsets as cover, as carbon is such a buzzword now, and carbon credits and all these things have been cannibalized and turned predatory, and all these offsets, and basically I don't have to do anything positive. I can just buy credits from somebody else's doing positive. But then we create this scenario where people who are doing the right thing aren't in a financial position to own their own credits. They have to sell them. And now if they get themselves in trouble, they can't make decisions because they no longer have credit offsets. They've been sold off, right? They're selling off their data, their rights, their practices. It's a very strange process.
My eye twitching.
Uh, it's a whole different thing. Carbon credits could be a whole season for us. But airlines specifically, KLMs, Fly Responsibly, Ryanair has come up a lot where we are having these campaigns around carbon offsets, but we're not actually lowering emissions. But the company is showing that they're lowering emissions through purchasing offsets. Where do we even start there? We got 3 minutes left in the show. Go ahead and just
Well, that's a
synopsis that whole.
well, no, that's just a perfect place to bring a PR manager. You bring them in and they say, "Hey, do you know how we're going to frame this? We're going to make it as this is a team effort, and our passengers and us are working on this
Ah,
together to lower our emissions. So that's why our flights cost more because it's part of our initiative to, plant trees over there and to help this community over here. And we have this project on solar energy and this and that. So that's how we're going to market it, and we're going to sell you a round trip for £1,500." From Paris to Amsterdam.
mm,
Nothing crazy.
mm,
That's exactly where the
yeah,
PR manager comes in. And again, it's
that's
annoying.
good. It's we. It's not us and you.
No,
It's
it's
we.
we.
All of a sudden.
We're in this together. So when someone calls us out, you should feel bad too because you flew with us. And that's the issue. You're trying to make it
Mhm.
everybody's issue instead of just doing the thing. I've said this before. We've come up with a lot of fun, innovative tools that just keep getting used in a way that is just really disappointing. The idea of sustainable development was amazing until it began, and now it's like, wow, okay, that was a lie. Carbon credits was a great idea, and now it's like, oh, we
Mhm.
come up with so many tools, and I think that's just a trap.
We're getting faster and faster at ruining a good
Yeah,
idea too.
yeah,
Like it used to take a while where those early adopter or those innovators then led to the early adopters. There really was ground swell. There was grassroots movement
yeah,
that created foundational change and potential systemic change and cultural change. And it took a decade or something for, the corporate piranhas to be able to figure out how to manipulate that. It is happening instantaneously. Where now sometimes I see these initiatives come out. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was from a think tank that already created the grassroots movement with the goal of making it a predatory practice from day one. How do you can't even keep up with the cycling of these types of programs and initiatives. So great. Now we've given even less solutions for people in this
I
in
think the
this
one
episode.
thing I encourage people is, and again, I'm gonna sound like a hippie, but just buy local. Honestly,
Yeah,
I
that's number
know
one.
I know it's not something that is necessarily affordable to everybody. And again, that's a system issue, not the issue of your local bread maker and your local plant shop or anything like that. If you
Mhm.
buy local, what tends to happen is you are already cutting the supply emissions that come from it because it's
Yeah.
grown in your area besides having to be shipped from somewhere. If you're buying local, you can take your own stuff. You don't need all these bags. You don't need Amazon packages and cardboard and all this plastic and stuff. Like buying local is one of the best ways to reduce your own emissions and actually help your own economy see it right there, helping like it's just so good. It creates community as well. Honestly, if you can and you are in a position where that is a thing, you know, because I'm speaking from a European context where we walk everywhere. You guys have highways. So,
Yeah, we drive everywhere.
exactly. But if you can, as local as you can, is the best
Mhm.
option. And also, a lot of these small businesses don't have a PR team and a marketing team that is
Yeah.
trying to greenwash and manipulate you. They're just trying to sell their stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes they're even, let's say, carrying products that are detrimental. To your point, even starting to localize your purchasing can put you on a path to make more and more better decisions. I think it's a great first step for people is just reframing the way that they're purchasing. And we do a lot of that. And here's the how polarizing it can be. And sometimes you feel you feel hypocritical. I feel hypocritical sometimes. You know the number one selling product at Walmart every year? You know what it is?
What is that?
It's bananas.
No, you're kidding.
Yeah, very, very strange.
Oh, wow.
Walmart, biggest retailer in the world. Yeah, one of the top selling products every year is bananas. And we don't shop at Walmart, but we buy bananas. We are not in a place where bananas grow. We are creating a huge footprint by buying bananas. And there may be a day where we drive to Shivers Farm 15 minutes from here and go and the kids go see the pigs and we go buy meat at this farm and it's an amazing experience and we talk to the owner and we're connected in this way and the meat is amazing and we love supporting that family and then we go run by the store and buy some bananas. And that is the reality for ourselves and for a lot of people is we're making a very poor decision that I know is a poor decision. But we like
You
bananas.
can't win every battle.
And then we're also
And that's what
supporting
I
Shivers
mean.
Farm.
But that's what I mean, choose your battle. Like,
Right.
when I moved to the UK, I chose I'm not eating tropical fruits because they're not from here. I haven't had a mango in 3 years, guys. I am
For a
dying.
Dominican, that's a real commitment. I
I'm
understand.
dying, okay? Pineapple, I haven't had it.
Wow.
Nothing, because I know it's not from here. But that's my one fight.
All right. We're gonna make an attempt to give up bananas here. If you can give up tropical fruit as a Dominican,
I
we
know,
have
it
to be
takes
able
it.
to give up
Takes it.
bananas. Okay.
Thank you guys for listening.
Yes, that's all the time that we have for
Choose your
today.
fight.
Yes. Pick your battles, make a small decision, make a small step. Don't guilt yourself for buying the bananas if you're buying local and creating some kind of positive impact in your own routine, creating a little bit of culture, shifting that narrative for yourself. It will have an impact because there's a few billion people on this planet. Everybody making that one decision, it'll have a net impact. We really have to hope for that. Okay. That's greenwashing, part 1 and part 2. Go to tangeliclife.org. Check out the first episode. Check out the blog post connected. Lots of resources there so you can get even more confused, but really be able to make those decisions for yourself. Be able to feel like you're empowered to understand that you have the confidence and the ability to kind of have some tools to suss through some of all of this white noise getting thrown at you. That's it for Victoria and I. We appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Let's talk power, let's talk change. From rural lights to brighter days. Equity rising, voices strong. We're building tomorrow where we all belong. Tangelic Talks, energy, equity, pride. Empowering the world, side side by side. A spark becomes a fire, a vision that's true. Together we rise, it starts with you.